Welcome to Policy RX with the Rock Doc. I'm Erik Murdoch, coming to you from the doctor's office in Estes Park, Colorado. In this episode, we are joined by Quinn Brett. Quinn is a professional athlete, was a climbing ranger at Rocky Mountain National Park, was a person who held many records for speed ascents and other hard climbing endeavors. You might have seen her in the movie An Accidental Life, which documents Quinn's life, including an accident she had in 2017 that left her in a wheelchair. She is an advocate. She's always been a climbing advocate. Now she's an advocate for adaptive athletes and people with disabilities. And I'm really glad that Quinn can join us. Welcome to Policy RX, Quinn.
Thanks, Erik.
Well, let's just get into it. Tell us what happened in 2017. A lot of people have seen the movie, but a lot of our audience might have not.
Yeah, sure. I was rock climbing in Yosemite National Park. As you mentioned, I have some speed records and link up kind of adventures in Yosemite and elsewhere. And so we were doing like a training lap on the nose of El Cap, and I took a 100-foot fall and fractured my T12 vertebrae. So I smashed into the boot flake and broke my back, and now I am paralyzed from the waist down.
But you are still getting after it. I know that firsthand. You are still an incredible athlete, and you've done some pretty neat things since then. Maybe list a couple of them, including your Connell Divide Trail.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I was the first person to handcycle the Tour Divide. So biking from Banff, Canada, down to Antelope Wells, New Mexico. And I have adaptive hiked the Grand Canyon rim to rim, so from the south rim to the north rim. What else have I done? Wow.
Seem to be out there all the time. So let's start from the beginning. So pre-accident, I want to talk about your life as an advocate and being part of sort of the climbing community, which you'll always be part of. But you first visited Washington, D.C. in 2016 with a cohort of professional climbers that were sort of all introduced to climbing advocacy at the same time. I think, Access Fund decided maybe a decade ago that we wanted to really introduce a lot of people, specifically professional climbers, to advocacy. People really connect with professional climbers, and congressional staffers are really compelled by the stories of professional climbers. And so we started introducing loads of professional athletes like Alex Honnold, Sasha DeJulian, Tommy Caldwell, Lynn Hill, and many others, and Kai Leitner, and yourself. I missed a lot, so I apologize to all the people who joined in those early days. But I wanted to sort of talk about, like, what were when you reflect back on that experience, which was interesting because it was 1 year before your accident. What was surprising to you when you first went to Capitol Hill, and what did you learn? And how has your advocacy work changed post-accident, 2018, 2019 to today? What impact did that experience have on you?
Man, well, it was definitely intimidating in 2016 to go. And I guess I walked in thinking, they're not going to listen. I don't know what we're doing. I feel kind of like a used car salesman, or maybe they're used car salesmen. I don't know. It just kind of felt like this weird relationship. But returning in 2017 on the climbing with Access Fund again, even in just 1 year, how it changed of like, oh, look at some of these folks remembered our names. They remembered our conversations. Just pointed to this value of relationship building. And for me, I guess when you're in your state or your home or whatever, and it feels impossible, why would you call a representative or write a representative? Like, no one's going to listen. It really turned my head to, no, they do. And persistence actually really matters. And the more community members talk about it, not just me, but all rock climbers or all adaptive athletes elevate their voice about a particular topic, the more it actually matters, and we can make a difference.
I agree with what you say. And I think what was interesting last week, I mean, today we're recording this on February 3rd. 2026, but last week, the House of Representatives had an oversight committee meeting where they were talking about implementing the Explore Act, all these recreation policies. And three or four congressional members were talking about climbing policy and climbing like they really knew about it. It took us a decade. That cohort of pro climbers really started that, of sort of like introducing these ideas. And these congressional members were talking about climbing like they knew about fixed anchors and multi-pitch routes and different climbing areas and the economics associated with it. And it really took about a decade to sort of train Congress to know about climbing. And what you're talking about sounds like the first discussions. You were sort of introducing the ideas to people, which was super powerful. How did you take those experiences and sort of apply it to what you're advocating for now, which is slightly different than maybe what you were in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. Recognizing immediately upon entering this world of disability, and particular, like adaptive recreation, people don't know what they don't know. And while there are lots of laws that support people with disabilities, unless you're disabled or know somebody intimately, you really don't know what the laws say or what they mean or what their purpose is. And so immediately coming out of the gates, I came in kind of hard in the accessibility world because I was like, I'm going to talk loud and proud about this stuff and I'm going to point to everyone about this stuff. And it really on a call today. And it's really cool to see what the National Park Service is doing now. And I was like, is this my ego talking? Like, I kind of started this program in the National Park Service and now they're running with it. But 10 years ago, they didn't care as much because
What's the program?
it's this we've passed in 2013, there was a law that passed trail sign information saying that all trails, we should move away from saying trails are easy, moderate, hard. This is for accessibility reasons, but also, as you can imagine, search and rescue wise, it's also really helpful to have more specific information about trails. So we should have the length of the trail, the average and minimum width, the average and maximum cross slope, typical and maximum running slope, and then the surface type. And if you provide those 5 pieces of information about all of our trails, then people with mobility devices like myself can make more informed decisions about what trail works for them. Like if a trail's super narrow, I probably am not going to go there. But if my buddy Erik's along and it's just a little bit narrow, we might go. And so I just started advocating for that. And next thing you know, now national parks are starting to care about measuring their trails or just providing more objective information about their parks for accessibility reasons. But inherently that helps everyone, with families, with all populations can just use more information for their decision making.
It reminds me of a story. It's not about trails, but about being with you on Capitol Hill and having to move across from the one side of Capitol Hill to the other. And it's not as easy as people might think in a wheelchair. And we had to go down an escalator.
Oh, you're going up it with Alex.
I can't remember. I thought I was going down, or maybe I was going up it, but I had you on your rear 2 wheels, and I got so pumped holding you. I thought I was going to drop you down this abyss. And it made me think about how difficult it is to navigate the world.
Right, and that was we didn't have information of where to go in the Capitol, where's the elevator, so okay, I guess we'll just take the escalator.
If I hadn't been training that year, I think I would have dropped you. So tell me about your perception of the climbing community in general. I mean, has it changed since your accident? How do you define sort of the outdoor recreation community, the climbing community? There's a lot of different ideas on who that includes and what that is. So tell us a little bit about the way you view this now, and who, the Access Fund is supposed to be representing the climbing community. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's funny in that before my injury, I had done a few volunteer days and some big trips with Paradox Sports, which is a Boulder adaptive climbing organization. And so I was well aware of people with disabilities and how they recreate. But I guess for me, what's changed is that maybe how we see people with disabilities is that they do their recreation over there with the adaptive sports organization, and we do our stuff over here, able-bodied. And now my perception is, because I want to be treated just like everybody else, I don't want to go over there. I want to hang out with my friends. So to me, it's like we need to be, in all aspects of life, we need to be more inclusive in thinking about how can we make this program or activity possible for all people and meet them where they're at and not push them away to this other place because that's a better suitable place for them, or it's more safe, or whatever that is. I mean, I get painted with the brush of I'm not capable or it's going to be unsafe all the time. That's so frustrating.
What are some examples of sort of adventures that you've wanted to pursue but were problematic because of the phenomena that you just described?
Yeah, gosh, like adaptive skiing, some resorts. I had a lot of people in the Midwest contact me and say that there's resorts in the Midwest that are totally denying people with disabilities, like they won't even allow them on the lifts, which is illegal. And then just me in the field going on handcycles and being in wilderness, for instance, like people saying that I don't belong there, or I'm not allowed to be there. And anything from like concessions in our national parks, like there's, if you offer a rafting program or a rock climbing concession program or whatever it is that you're offering, you have to be able to provide people with disabilities that same activity. They want to sign up with their family and their friends and go do the rafting too. But there's not a lot of facilities and places that send you away or deny you still.
Give us a sense of how large the adaptive athlete community is who's interested in climbing. Like, is this something that's really common? Yeah, give us an idea of scale.
That's a good question. I don't know about exact numbers, but I do know that like we have paraclimbing is in the
Yeah.
Olympics, and that's huge now. I mean, that's all over. It's definitely not unknown of or unheard of. Like, and as technology increases, and I think social media has been a really positive force in this way of seeing, oh, I'm paralyzed and there's people in the rock climbing gym doing pull-ups and crushing it and they're going to the Olympics. Like, that's blossomed sports just by having that information or seeing others do rad stuff. It's blossomed the sport. And yeah, and technology, as it increases, like now I can adaptive hike the Grand Canyon, which I was never able to do before 10 years ago because this equipment didn't exist. So while it still might be small, it's definitely growing. And one of the problems with that is like, there's this lovely quote of, if you don't see us, that means there's nothing to fix. But if you don't fix anything, then you're never going to see us. And so that's part of the problem is like, you guys, if able-bodied folks don't ever see us out, then they don't ever assume that we want to be there. But we should change that perspective of, we're not seeing this population. How come?
Yeah, and I think that, one of the things that's important about climbing to the world is that climbers come back and tell these inspirational stories. People love hearing, from Tommy and Alex about about what they're up to, and they inspire people in different ways who aren't climbers. And I think that that's why it's important for people to see adaptive athletes, because they have incredible stories to tell to inspire people. I mean, just you personally, you know, my daughter once went out with you recently and decided not to complain that her feet hurt because she saw what you're what you're up to, and it was just a microcosm of sort of like that idea that you have an important, inspiring story to tell, that might make people better, or might make the world better, might make people you know realize different things or have different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, what are some of the specific policy issues that need to be resolved? Like, clearly, nobody contemplated 50 years ago that you were going to be ripping around on a hand cycle and navigating really technical trails, and getting up steep things and navigating difficult terrain. First, please describe to the audience, like, what is your gear? What's your setup? How do
Huh.
you get to the crag, the trailhead, in your van? You got, and what do you do? What's your setup look like? And then what are the policy obstacles that you're up against with the best current gear that you have to navigate this technical terrain?
That's a great question. Yep. So I arrive in my van and my manual wheelchair. So that's like 22 inches wide. It's got skinny road bike like tires that are 25-inch rims or something, and like tread that I akin my everyday wheelchair to my flip flops. It's got these caster wheels in the front that are 4 inches, and anytime they catch on any little piece of gravel in a dirt parking lot, it is impossible to move. I could trip. My tripping means I eject forward out of my wheelchair. So not the most suitable thing for any kind of off pavement adventure. So in my van, I also always have one of my hand cycles. The most common one that I use is called a reactive adaptations bomber. Because of my paralysis, I have core function, so I can sit in kind of a kneeling position. My chest is sitting on a seat, and my hands are then out in front of me on handlebars. Also, below that little seat, I can rest my chest on the seat, but below that, there are crank arms, like hand pedals, and they're opposing. And then this wheelchair is my off-road wheelchair, I call it. It's got 3 wheels, 2 in the front, 1 in the back, 27.5-inch tires, mountain bike tread, and it has a throttle and e-assist. So as I'm pedaling, I get a little e-assist with my arms. And when I'm in super technical terrain, like on the Grand Canyon, I was mostly on the handlebars using the throttle because I'm like going up steps or I'm balancing left and right, like putting one hand on the wheel to push and like rock crawl, which is kind of fun. I do kind of like rock climbing moves and pull through some stuff. But yeah, the challenges with those is that a lot of land managers or just everyday folks see that piece of equipment, especially when I'm in the wilderness, because there's the Wilderness Act says no wheels or mechanized devices, but folks don't see or don't take an extra second to look that I'm pedaling with my arms, or they don't take a moment to ask, "Hey, lovely lady, what is that you're using? That's a curious piece of equipment." For me to tell them, well, in fact, I'm paralyzed and this is the way I hike. My legs don't work. And there's a definition of wheelchairs in wilderness that most people don't know about, because we have to, just like I was mentioning, we can't deny people from programs or activities. That's in accessibility law. Wilderness is an activity that people participate in, and we can't deny people with disabilities from participating and going into wilderness.
Yeah, the Wilderness Act is such an incredible law, but we also have to always remember that the folks that drafted the law could not contemplate what you're up to today.
Oh, yeah.
And knowing some things about those people who the founders of the Wilderness Act, they would have probably really appreciated what you were doing. And I think sort of like figuring out ways to make sure that land managers understand that what you're doing is appropriate and necessary it seems simple, but it doesn't appear to be simple in practice.
Well, and we weren't even thought about, like, the Wilderness Act was established when, 68?
64.
64. Yeah, because the Architectural Barriers Act was 68. So the first accessibility law was 68. Then we had another one, the Program and Activities one was 73. But we didn't get a definition for wheelchairs in wilderness until the ADA in 1990. Isn't that wild? Like, that's the first time they're like, oh yeah, maybe people with disabilities also want to go into wilderness.
But wheelchairs are allowed in wilderness. But if and correct me if I'm wrong, the definition of wheelchair is something that's appropriate for indoor use. So does your rig qualify?
It does, but that's why it's subjective. And my work in the National Park Service was always saying, well, so that definition, there's a wilderness definition for wheelchairs, and then there's a regular old not in wilderness definition, and they're very similar. They say, both of them say manually powered or battery powered. And the non-wilderness one says suitable indoors and or outdoors for locomotion. The one in the Wilderness Act, oddly enough, we're talking about wilderness, says suitable in an indoor pedestrian area. And you wonder why I would even talk about indoor pedestrian area with the Wilderness Act. But I've surmised with my wilderness background, well, we're trying to maintain these 5 qualities of wilderness. We want it to be untrammeled. We want it to be quiet, opportunities for solitude. There's these things, these pristine kinds of things that we're trying to upkeep with wilderness. And I'm like, well, what is the what are the similarities between that indoor pedestrian area, food court, and wilderness? Well, probably you don't want a combustible engine in either one. Probably we shouldn't have something super loud decibel level in either one. Probably since we're not supposed to trammel the earth, we probably shouldn't have like our crampons in the food court, although they're okay outside in certain instances. And so I think that was the general ethos of why they said indoor pedestrian area, was like, hey, well, we're trying to keep up the qualities of wilderness over here. But that was where the conundrum lies, because land managers just see, well, that thing doesn't look like it's made for indoors. Well, of course not. Like, your hiking boots weren't made for indoors, but they can be used indoors. Like, yeah.
So what are you up to now? What do you where do you work now? What are you up to now? And are you working on clarifying that distinction so that all adaptive athletes, can more easily get out and go climbing and reach faraway places?
Yeah, so initially after my injury, I returned to the National Park Service in this exact same realm, doing wilderness accessibility. And I then, throughout working a few years, realized that there's a lot more need for this. Like, I sparked a plug in a lot of people. And so I started a consulting company with my friend Joe Stone. He lives in Jackson Hole, also paralyzed, and he's been paralyzed a little longer than me. But we started a consulting company, and we work for the BLM, National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, state of New Jersey, state of Colorado, whoever we contract out to do this educational work of showing these devices. Because a lot of it is just misconception. Like, they're like, well, those are heavy. I'm like, well, the bike's 100 pounds. Horses are allowed in wilderness. Those are 2,000 pounds. And here's how they operate. And here's how, like, they worry about speed. Well, that can go 20 miles an hour. And we remind them, well, a lot of people can run 20 miles an hour. Usain Bolt can go 27. And nobody's telling him on a trail to slow down. And think about my 3-wheeled 35-inch wide thing on a very tight, narrow trail. I don't think conceivably I'm ever going to go 20 miles an hour. And I have a brain knowing that this is a hiking trail. I'm going to try to stick with my friends and stick to some ethic about, hey, this is for hiking, not for biking, not for racing around. So we just do a lot of educational things of that nature, and educate why we're using these. Like, the purpose is, like, we've been told our whole lives that we can only use our flip-flops. That's not very awesome for in the recreational realm. And now we have all of these awesome technology and all these tools to actually pick a different pair of shoes for the activity that we want to do.
I love seeing adaptive athletes out in the wild, and I hope that the work that you're doing is going to make a difference, and perhaps we'll team up at the Access Fund to work on some of these policy issues, because I've realized that certainly you and many other people are really part of the climbing community, and we owe it to the entire climbing community to support each other. So let's wrap this up. Usually we ask this same question. What do you got going in the near future? Any plans for adventures or vacations or trips or anything fun out in the outdoors?
What do I have planned? Nothing in the near future. I'm going to go scuba diving. I got my scuba diving certification. So I'm going to do that in May. I'm going to Caymans. I signed up for a triathlon in August. So I'm going to do my first off-road triathlon in Steamboat since my injury. I used to do this race all the time before I was injured, and so I'm psyched to return. Yeah, so it'll be at this Steamboat triathlon will be very educational in that, folks. I don't think there's a lot of para athletes doing off-road triathlons, so like on a trail, on a gravel road, that kind of stuff. And that e-assist that I have is definitely going to bring up some interest, but it's fun.
Well, that sounds super exciting. Thanks so much for being a guest on Policy RX and inspiring the entire climbing community and all folks who like to get outside. Really appreciate you. And thanks to everyone for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode of Policy RX.
Thanks, Erik.